program by, for, and about women today with Sandra Elkin.
Good evening and welcome to Woman. Tonight we're going to continue our discussion on older women. With me is Laurie Shields. Laurie is National Coordinator of the Alliance for Displaced Homemakers. Also with me is Tish Sommers. Tish is co-coordinator of the Task Force on Older Women for the National Organization for Women. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you, Sandy.
Is it true that older women are the poorest segment of American society?
Well, actually, I don't have the statistics on it, but the last Department of Labor figure I saw indicated that those living underneath the poverty level, there are more widows, elderly widows, living underneath the annual poverty level of, I think it's $2,000, isn't it, Tish? So yes, I suppose you'd say that. And certainly it's true within the minority group. The black, the Chicana women in their middle years are very definitely living under the poverty level.
What are the obstacles against older women getting jobs?
Oh, where do you want me to start? Principally, I guess you have to start with the one beast we're all beating, and that is the high unemployment figure. But aside from that, there is the conditioning or the thinking within the traditional job market that is definitely ageist. Older women are not considered the delight to have in the office or on the staff. If you were to take a walk through the department stores, for example, you'd find the types of jobs older women are filling. They're mostly part-time jobs.
What about these part-time jobs? I mean, at least they are available, right?
Well, yes, and I suppose the women who have them are very grateful for having them, but that doesn't mean that they're the most desirable jobs, because part-time jobs, in many instances, are without any fringe benefits at all, which means that it's cheap labor, exploited, leaves them with very little to fall back on come later years.
So really, people shouldn't be so grateful for some of those jobs?
I don't know. I've got ambivalent feelings about that. I know our mail reflects the fact that women are grateful to have any kind of a job. But I don't think that's the option. We want to give women who have, for the most part, we're talking about women who have filled the role that society told them was their greatest and the role they should be fulfilling. They're the women that are former full-time homemakers. Now, if this is what we want, that her only option should be a part-time job, maybe, and there aren't that many of them to go around for everyone, or general assistance, I think we have to stop and think about the problems of older women.
Are there myths about older women? Like, for instance, that there's a tremendous turnover if you hire, if you have lots of older women on your staff? Is that...
I don't know that older women have been given that many opportunities to test the myth or not. I do know that from an economic point of view, I mean, I'm sensible enough and pragmatic enough to understand that the employer within our system, our profit system, who has a large payroll and has insurance, health insurance, and pension plans to think of, possibly has had to think about whether he can afford to hire an older woman or not. I do know that those studies that have been done where older women have held jobs, they're much more conscientious about doing their work. They do not take off. Obviously, pregnancy is not a problem. But we shouldn't be talking about those anyway, Sandy, because those are jobs that are non-existent right now. And the other thing is, older women ought not be in competition with their younger sisters for those jobs.
Tish, did you know what I was referring to, the studies?
Well, I know, for example, that this myth that older women are not reliable has been debunked. That, as a matter of fact, partly because they have fewer options. Older women are likely to stay put. They're likely to give their all because they are that desperate. It doesn't mean they're not exploited.
All right, there's a large segment of the female population that is not covered by Social Security, disability, unemployment insurance, things like that. And Laurie, you're very involved in a kind of alternative for that large segment of the population.
Deeply so.
And it's called the Displaced Homemakers Bill.
Yes, that's true. Actually, displaced homemakers legislation covers both bills that exist at a state level and also national.
Right. I guess I was referring to the national bill because that's the one that I'm
Yes.
most familiar with.
Well, it seems like I've been doing this for 100 years, and I'm sure people now today who have learned to live with the phrase displaced homemakers think it's been around for a while, but the truth is, before April 10th in 1975, no one except the woman who coined the phrase, Tish Sommers, had even heard of a displaced homemaker. Perhaps to start at the most basic, we ought to talk about what
What
is
it is, right.
a displaced homemaker, and I'd like to yield the floor to the woman who coined the phrase, who can best do it. Tish, what is a displaced homemaker?
Well, there were a number of us who had been trying to get those jobs, to get jobs of any kind. These were older women who were divorced, widowed, separated, who had been homemakers, who had done this job for the society, but then needed to earn a living themselves. We found that we were stymied in every way. We experienced age discrimination in employment. We found no real understanding of the problem. We got out and we demonstrated to try to get the Age Discrimination Act enforced, and found that hardly helped us very much because of the fact that just weren't enough jobs to go around.
You mean you took to the streets?
We did take to the streets. There was 75 of us once out in front of the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco singing "The Old Gray Mare, She's Better Than She Used to Be." And we got a few jobs out of it, and we did at least raise the issue about age discrimination. But we recognized, particularly when jobs began to get tight in the end of '75, we recognized we needed a government assist to draw attention to the problem nationally in the first place, and secondly, so that older women could get together to work on their own problems. Nobody liberates anyone else. We have to do that for ourselves. And we recognized that we needed to organize, to move. And it was around that basis. We defined ourselves as displaced homemakers, and with the help of a young lawyer who was working with us by the name of Barbara Dudley, public interest lawyer, wrote a model bill and went to Washington to try to get it introduced.
Okay, what are the provisions? What does it provide for?
Well, briefly, 5 things, and that is what makes it different and innovative as far as legislation goes. It does talk in terms of providing, as a separate entity, a multipurpose service center, which women over 35, women in their middle years, I think the national bill defines it as, would get peer counseling, would find a way to have their native and or acquired talents evaluated, would certainly get training, and would positively get placing. But far more important, there would be a way to identify, or at least there would be experimenting to identify community needs to create jobs for which the former homemaker skills would qualify her to fill. Jobs, needs that not necessarily opening up new fields, but perhaps a new twist on an old job, an existing field that hadn't been thought of. I mean, we have to open up the barriers. The election's over. We can stop using that phrase, create new jobs, as rhetoric. We're talking about actually creating new jobs, and that's what this legislation is about, and that's why it's different, and that's why it deserves really the experimentation, because if it's co-opted within existing programs, it won't work.
Do you get this reaction? I mean, and this is mine at the moment, and I'll just give it to you straight.
Do.
More money. I mean, we can't spend more money for social services.
You have your option. It's a relatively small appropriation, short-range, wise move, as against increasing your option to increase general assistance or welfare, because these will be the only options. We're talking about an increasing number of women. Last year, you just talked about how many women we had. Last year, 53% of the American women in this country who were married were and are full-time homemakers. We estimate that there's a potential of 15 million women who will fit this definition of displaced homemakers if we don't start doing anything. We're not talking about legislation that will create batches of jobs. What is innovative and different about this legislation is it creates a minimum, according to the bill, a minimum of 50 of these multipurpose centers where this experimentation can take place while these women are getting all these other services they do need that they are not getting right now. But much more to the point, it means they are creating job models which can be exported.
In other words, the women are experimenting themselves to find new ways of using their skills. It's a self-help concept. In the process, for example, of the trainees at the center that I was working with, in the process of getting trained are teaching others. And there's nothing that helps to overcome that sense of having done nothing of value, as going out and teaching and talking and beginning to really try to address some of the community problems that we face in this society.
See, society has conditioned us to believe that what we do as homemakers really has no value other than within the framework of the small world of the home, even though they say at the same time, this is the basis of our society. When a homemaker's role is finished, and that's what we mean when we say a displaced homemaker, a woman who is dependent upon an income most of her life, who has been a homemaker for a substantial number of years, who loses that income either through widowhood or divorce, or is separated. Okay, when that happens, then society says, you're no longer of value. There is no use for your skills.
And these workers have none of the cushions that other workers have. There's no unemployment insurance for them. There are no special training programs for them, and none of the other kinds of cushions that workers have to ease the pain.
And we don't believe that, because it's not only the conditioning of society that says the homemaker's role is finished when her husband leaves or dies or her children grow up and leave home. There is also the idea that homemaking is a series of household chores. I mean, one of the things that bothers me as a displaced homemaker is that my 15 years, admittedly not many, but my 15 years of homemaking is reduced by those studies that exist today. And I mean some rather important studies that academically are accepted as being very valuable. It's all put on the basis of the assessment of a total number of chores. How much time spent doing this and something. Nonsense. A homemaker learns to be a manager. A homemaker learns to use judgment. A homemaker learns to be to budget, to be a consultant. My goodness gracious, when one considers the family problem, she becomes a psychiatrist as well. I mean, there are lots of talents. We must look at the overall picture.
And she has responsibility as well.
So your intention is to redevelop these skills,
yeah,
or to redirect them.
Right, Sandy, what makes us not angry, that's not it, but sad, certainly in my case, is when we get letters that start out, I've never worked, I raised 12 children. Now that's ridiculous. But she means that. She believes that she did nothing of value except raising children, but that wasn't work.
Yeah, that's
Think of the
I
laundry
find
she
that
did.
really upsetting.
Yeah, it's obscene as well as upsetting to be. I mean, because especially as I said, one of the things that pleased me most about this legislation is that it not only grew out of the grassroots, came out of the actual experience of some women who had it, the problem, but that the bill has taken off. I mean, the legislation has taken off. Nobody's spent a lot of money promoting this bill. It has gone like crazy for one good reason, and that is that women all across this country, in every state, because every state has displaced homemakers, have opted to do some work for themselves, and that's the trick. We're talking about my generation, I'm 56, who grew up learning that there were two subjects you never mentioned. One was politics and the other one was religion. Well, these women are beginning to learn that if they don't think politically for themselves, they don't work together and act together collectively, nothing is going to be done. We can't fault legislators that we elect and then forget that they're there and don't tell them about our needs. So they're telling them about their needs.
I guess if there's one message through all of this, it's organize, right?
Oh, absolutely. And what is collective action except the sum total of individual acts? And that's what's happening.
Yes. But it also takes a certain kinds of drive and leadership, and I think that Laurie is a perfect example of a displaced homemaker who found her niche, found the talents that she had in that kind of political
You
organization.
didn't always have this higher consciousness, did you?
Oh, no, I was I'm a late blooming feminist, if you want to call it. But that's why I think that I can relate to the women I talk to. Not that Tish hasn't done it or other feminists haven't done it, but I mean, I've done the Girl Scout lady and the president of the Mothers Club and all the rest of the, you know, and was very proud. And I mean that. very pleased to be Mrs. Arthur Shields.
Tell me
without
what happened
losing
to
my
you. I
identity.
mean, I'm always curious to know how this happens with people.
Well,
You were walking down the street one day. No.
Arthur died in 1970, and we had made plans. Well, that income didn't last. We wound up in this semantic argument that the lads in Washington were having, whether we were in a depression or a recession. It really didn't matter to me. All I knew is my income wasn't sufficient. But I had worked before my marriage, and I just felt I had good enough credentials to get a job, but I didn't. And I kept running into what loads of women are hearing: you're overqualified. Or all of my homemaking years, and I think 15's a nice round figure, that work was all just put aside, wasn't even acknowledged. They'd look at my record of being in advertising and merchandising and say, that's a marvelous work record. Too bad it's not recent. You know, those are the things. We've got to raise homemaking to the level of the status of a profession. But back to my own, I couldn't get it. An employment agency woman in San Francisco finally said to me, Laurie, I'm 48 and I'm over the hill. And I was facing my 55th birthday, so I figured she had a message for me. Then I met Tish Sommers, and she had a message for me. And as a result of...
which was don't agonize, organize.
Right, and go out and do thou likewise. And I've been sort of galloping from one end of the country to the other ever since. Doing something that I love, I thoroughly enjoy, I really do, but a job I never would have sought on my own.
Would you see the Displaced Homemakers bill as a stepping stone to something further?
Very definitely.
Or do you see it as an end in itself?
Oh yes, yeah. If nothing else, and I'm almost choking on saying that. If I was about to say if we don't get a bill, but I know we're going to get a bill, and we're going to get a bill signed by President Carter by May 8th because that's Mother's Day, and he does like symbolic action. Please note, I didn't say gesture because I don't think this is a man who makes gestures. Anyway. If we did nothing other than that, then raise the consciousness of people, make them more aware of the resource that's at hand. We are not disposable like diapers. We are too young for Social Security. We are too old for the traditional job market. But by goodness gracious, we have a lot to give to this country.
And we can make a fuss. And I think that the interesting part of that, actually, when we first conceived of this bill, interestingly, I didn't believe we could get it passed, nationally at least. I thought, but it'll be a terrific handle for organizing women, raising consciousness, to make people recognize this problem exists. Now, partly through Laurie's efforts.
Oh no, the efforts of Women Every Place Acting on
and
Their Own,
women
that's what it
everywhere
was.
else.
The Old Girls Network is what we call it.
That's right.
And that's really what happened. The Old Girls Network helps every place.
I didn't know we had one.
Oh, do we have one? We have a gorgeous one in California. They've got a good one in Baltimore. The Baltimore Center is a very good example of what can come out of this bill. There are only 3 states that have the act passed. Now that's, when I said only 3, I should have stopped myself, because that's fantastic. Just since April 1975.
3 bills have been
3
passed
bills
on a
have
state
been
level.
passed.
Why is it necessary, if there's a national bill, to have the states pass a bill?
I'm not so, I don't know, because I know we need a national bill because we need national guidelines. That's one thing. But the other thing, we need, Tish used the proper word when she said when this legislation was first conceived, it was to get an assist. In other words, older women are really frugal. We don't believe the answer to curing a problem is to throw a lot of money at it. But we do recognize the fact that we are going to need an assist with this. Now, the national bill will provide both, incidentally, Representative Burke's bill, which is H.R. 28, and just recently, Senator Birch Bayh has introduced his, which is Senate 418, and they are identical bills. And what they do is provide, the federal monies provide 90% of the funding after the states have committed themselves to 10% for the centers. How many centers per state depends upon the bill and what the state wants to invest, which I think is a very good thing, because the states are our first level of government and our first contact, and they should be more conscious, more quick to jump to meeting the needs of constituents.
Where is the opposition coming from? Tish, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say in answer to that other question too, why do we need state bills? Because women are mobilizing, older women are organizing around state displaced homemaker legislation, for one thing, and they're not waiting. We didn't wait. We recognized we needed to move fast to get the state, a state model, a demonstration going in California, and that has been happening all over the country, wherever Laurie has been. But I think that it means that not only is there a stepping stone on a national level, but we're beginning to see displaced homemaker legislation as an organizing vehicle on a state level as well.
Yeah, women, see, we are all of us, men and women, we've gone through a traumatic time when we felt very far removed from government. Now with this bill and the state bills, women can really identify, and they are making some progress. They are getting through. Where's the opposition coming from is what you asked. Okay, on a state level, it's coming generally only from the departments working within states who have been charged with the responsibility of creating jobs and have not been able to. Existing programs, for instance, that could train an older woman have been unable to place older women in long-term jobs. I'm not talking about 8-week jobs. I'm talking about long-term jobs. All right, that's one reason why we need it. We also need we needed the state bills to convince members of Congress that this was a national problem. You see, there are no existing figures that count us to begin with, because homemaking isn't recognized as labor. We don't count. And so these bills prove we're out there. And the thunder that's going to be heard on the Hill this session is going to be the thunder of old ladies in tennis shoes, I'll tell you that. And it proves that the stereotype has got to be broken up, that not all old ladies in tennis shoes are flaky. That's one of the main reasons why I wear them, aside from the fact that they're very comfortable. It's a splendid movement, and the thing that it's so consistent with what President Carter's trying to do. You know, that's really what gave me the first real surge of hope that we had a chance to get the bill. July 12th, he endorsed this legislation. Birch Bayh, when he was a presidential candidate, endorsed it early.
Senator Bayh is bringing up the bill in the Senate, right?
He has introduced it in the Senate. It's S418. But the main thing that I like about it is that we are talking about a back to the people. This time, I think we're going to believe it, because I don't think any other candidate's going to have a chance to offer us the opportunity. I don't think we're going to let him. This is our last chance to believe government.
And once we get this bill passed, that we will move immediately on to other kinds of reforms, whether it's in the Social Security system, whether it's disability insurance for homemakers, the inclusion of homemakers under unemployment insurance program, so that there will have some protections, health insurance, and a variety of other things. So once this group is mobilized, we will be able to really have a voice, and we will have some impact, I think, not only on the women's movement, on the aging movement, and on government.
What do you want people to do?
Oh, my goodness, basic.
Funny I should ask,
yeah,
right?
funny you should ask. First of all, sit down and write a letter. You should know who your representative is for your district in Congress. You should know, obviously, who your senators are within your state. Don't worry about how you address it and what the right form is. Forget that. He doesn't think about whether you call him honorable or anything else when you put your X on that ballot in front of his name. So don't worry about how you address it. Just simply in your own words, tell him why, if you recognize yourself in the description of the displaced homemaker, why this legislation is so needed. And ask him, if you don't know about the legislation, then write your very first letter and ask for a copy of the bill and study it. It's in very simple language. It is not it's not the usual kind of bill, maybe because it doesn't deal with the usual sort of problem that most legislation does. So get the bill, study it, talk it up, and then use your secret weapon. Every one of us has an address book. Mine I've had since high school. The back of it is covered with the back ends of Christmas cards with addresses and changes. Pledge yourself to pick 10 names and write to 10 of your friends and tell them about the bill and ask them to do that. This is how do the same thing. This is how we built up the network in California. This is how we're building up the network every other place across the country. We'll do it if every woman acts not just for herself, but every woman acts for every woman. Please feel free to join us.
Laurie and Tish, while you're here, we only have a couple of minutes.
Yes.
There's another thing that I want to ask you that it's a question that many women ask, and that is if they are employed and they feel that they are being discriminated against because of age, what can they do? What is their recourse?
First thing to do is to file a complaint with the Wage and Hour Division of the Labor Department, and if there's a state anti-discrimination law in their state, at the same time to file a complaint with that state agency, if that agency covers age as well as sex and race and so on. It is not necessary to prove age discrimination. That's very difficult to do.
You don't need absolute proof in order to file a complaint?
The responsibility is up to the party in which you're complaining against.
Must prove that they didn't.
They prove that they didn't. Therefore, it's very important to immediately to file a complaint. The more complaints that are filed, the more action is going to be on this. It doesn't cost anything, and it's possible at least to get an investigation of the case.
And one other quick point of view, because there are 10 million members of AARP in this country, they all know what everybody else should know, is that they've begun a grand promotion against discrimination. There is a special address you can write to if you feel you've been discriminated against. Just check with your local chapter of AARP, and if that won't do, write to either one of us and we'll see that your letter gets passed on to AARP.
But they do not, let me make a point that they do not take care of particular cases. They're trying to get a file of cases so that they can work for legislative change in this area.
Because the law needs to be strengthened, is that what it is?
Right. The law needs to be strengthened and
enforced.
And enforced.
The one that exists, the laws that exist.
Is there a backlog of cases now?
Huge.
Yes, but not as bad as the EEOC
Yes,
and as on the sex discrimination cases. It's still very important to get complaints filed.
We are out of time. I thank you both for being here.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Next week, we'll be back with Tish, and we'll be joined by Marjorie Collins, editor of Prime Time, and Lydia Bragger of the Grey Panthers Media Watch Task Force. Also, if you're interested in further information, you might want to look at the following addresses.
This program was produced by WNED-TV, which is solely responsible for its content. Major funding was provided by public television stations. Additional support was provided by unrestricted general program grants from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the Ford Foundation.